Hi, thanks so much for joining me. So today I'm going to do the second part of my video in this series of our favorite middle grade. So this video is realistic fiction, more or less. And so my favorite author by far for realistic fiction for kids middle grade is Kate DiCamillo. And my daughter is not drawn to realistic fiction, yet she has read every single Kate DiCamillo book because of Winn-Dixie. And this was actually the first book that we read by Kate DiCamillo. And let's see, it was published, I believe, first into that in the year 2000. So this book is 182 pages. And so actually we read this, I think, when my daughter was in either kindergarten or first grade. So it's been some time since I read it. I actually have it on my reread list, but all of Kate DiCamillo made our list of favorites, every single one of her books. And I just wanted to start with the first one that she wrote. And so basically it's about a dog named Winn-Dixie, and it's about this little girl and basically her father and her mom's not in the picture, and it's just about her relationship with this dog. It's just very sweet, and we really both enjoyed it. So this one is The Tiger Rising. Okay, and so this one is the only Kate DiCamillo book that I personally cannot reread because it's a little more, it's one of those books where it's like I read it and I was really glad that I read it, and my daughter felt the same way, but then on the other hand, it's very, it has something happen in it that's very depressing to me, dealing with this tiger. So it says, walking through the misty Florida woods one morning, young Rob Horton discovers a large and very real tiger in the cage. On the same extraordinary day, he meets Sistine Bailey and begins to understand that some things like memories, heartache, and tigers can't be locked up forever. So yeah, so this one is, let's see. This one is 121 pages, also a pretty short middle grade novel, and a beautiful story about a little boy. Finding the tiger had been luck. He knew that. He had been out in the woods behind the Kentucky Star Motel, way out in the woods, not really looking for anything, just wandering, hoping that maybe he would get lost or get eaten by a bear and not have to go to school ever again. She has such a way with words. Her writing is beautifully put together. Her writing is perfectly edited. She doesn't use too many words. She doesn't use too few words. All of her stories deal with like the human condition, usually like love, loss, grief. Not all of them deal with grief, but this one, and family dynamics. A lot of them have, a lot of the stories, like the protagonist doesn't have a father or a mother in the picture. There's some harder things with animals in this book. Okay, so this is like, if I had to pick a favorite out of all her books, I've tried, it's very hard, but I would say The Tale of Despereaux is probably my top two. And it's about a mouse and a princess and a rat named Roscoe, Miggery So, a slow-witted serving girl with an impossible wish. So it weaves the tale of a princess, a poor girl named Miggery So, a rat, and a mouse called Despereaux. And she beautifully weaves these stories together, and it's just like a masterpiece. I mean, I can see why it won the Newbery. This is a book I've reread last year, 2022, and it's one of those books that I'd like to reread every year. The writing is beautiful. The way she describes just the way the characters feel, the humanity inside these characters, like things that they're going through. It's just a phenomenal book. And then we have The Magician's Elephant by Kate DiCamillo. So, again, this one deals with an orphan. He's an orphan named Peter, and he has one question for the fortune teller. If his sister is still alive, how can he find her? The answer is unexpected. Follow the elephant. Unbelievable, perhaps, but true. So this one, again, Peter, he's an orphan. He doesn't have his mother or his father. And it's this kind of mingling between him and how his path crosses with this elephant. And this one deals with a lot of emotions, but again, it's a really nice story, and it's just, yeah, like I said, she deals with all these life themes. Okay, another favorite. This isn't my top 2, but this is like my top 3. And I'm going to tell you guys my daughter's favorite too in a minute. So this one is another pretty short novel, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kay DiCamillo. This one, I'm not sure if they're all illustrated, but this one is... The illustrations kind of look like sepia toned. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they do. They have color ones too. I forgot about that. So they do have some color illustrations, and they have some that are kind of like black and white sepia. Beautiful. A lot of her books have illustrations. Okay, so this one is about a rabbit. Once in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a China rabbit named Edward Tulane. The rabbit was very pleased with himself, and for good reason. He was owned by a girl named Abilene, who treated him with the utmost care and adored him completely. And then one day he was lost. So this one doesn't deal with the theme of the little girl being an orphan, like who is sort of... So Edward Tulane is kind of like ends up... I don't want to give too much away. So since Edward Tulane is the protagonist, just like... so Edward Tulane's a protagonist, unlike some of her other books where the humans are protagonists. So he goes through all these ups and downs, and even though he's a rabbit, it's like he's a real person. And you just feel for him. And this one is so perfectly edited and worded, and the way every word is like meticulously placed in each sentence. It's just perfect. Let's see. Almost 200 pages. This rabbit. So the rabbit also encounters different people, and so you kind of feel like you like every character is so well understood and described, and you get to know like all these characters, even though like this is only 200 pages. Like it's like just so well written. Beautiful story. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite with her. Okay, so this is one of my daughter's favorites. This is Flora and Ulysses, and a lot of her books also have movies. This has a movie. The Teledespero has a movie we watched. I liked it. The Tiger Rising has a movie, but I'm reluctant to watch it because I told you guys I'm very sensitive about animal things and books, and I don't think I can watch it. I don't know. But The Tiger Rising has a movie. I believe Because of Winn-Dixie has a movie, yes, but we haven't seen it yet, which we need to get on that. And then I don't think these two do, but you never know. They probably will be made into movies. This one definitely has a movie, and we definitely saw the movie. It was pretty good. We liked it. And this is one of my daughter's favorites. I would say this one is way more like whimsical than the other ones. Like it's not as serious. It is because you have, let's see. I don't want to give too much away. And then, so it's, okay. So the protagonist is a little girl, and her parents are both in the picture, so she's also not an orphan, but her family is still dealing with different things. And it has like some comic book style stuff because the little girl, let's see, her name is Flora, and she really likes this comic book, and so that's why I think the illustrator did some comic book things. But so basically it's about Flora. And it says, Flora Bell Buckman, a natural-born cynic with a penchant for comic books and a skill for avoiding her mother's idiotic high jinks, looks out the window one day to see her neighbor vacuuming up a squirrel. Holy bagamba. But that is just the beginning. As you can tell just from me reading this, it's like, this one's very much more like silly about the friendship of this little girl and the squirrel, and the shenanigans, if you want to call it that, the squirrel kind of brings into her and her like parents' lives. And it's just cute. The next 3. This is a series of 3. And this is Raymie Nightingale, which is the first one, Louisiana's Way Home, which is the second, and Beverly Right Here. So my daughter's second favorite book out of all Kay DiCamillo's books is Beverly Right Here. And my second favorite is Louisiana's Way Home. And these 3 are 3 girls that are friends. And it's just, each individual book is about their lives, you know, individually, but then they all kind of mix together because you're introduced to them in the first book. So this one was the first one that we read, and it's good. And let's see. So Raimi Clark has a plan. 2 days ago, her father left home with a dental hygienist. So this one, again, it deals with, you know, a parent that's like out of the picture. If Raimi can win the Little Miss Central Florida tire competition, then her father will see Raimi's picture in the paper and maybe come home. She has to contend with Louisiana Elefante, who has a show business background, and Beverly Topinski, who's determined to sabotage the contest. So she wants to like win this competition, and she thinks that like it'll get her father to come home, and so deals with the friendship of these, you know, kids. And this is 250-ish pages. Did I not say this? Sorry. I'm like I did this in my last video. I just kept forgetting. This one's about 250 pages. And so yeah, so this one was the first one in the series, and then this one's just like, I love this one. This one just sticks with me for some reason. Besides A Tale of Despereaux and Edward Tulane, these three, including those two and this one, just stick with me. They've never left me. I love this story. This is about a little girl named Louisiana, and I don't want to give too much away, but again, she's dealing with not having two parents. I don't know if you want to maybe technically call her an orphan. In the beginning you're introduced to her grandmother. When Granny wakes up in the middle of the night to tell her that the day of reckoning has arrived, they have to leave the home immediately. Louisiana figures that it's only a matter of time before Granny changes her mind and they come back home. After all, Granny has made many middle of the night ideas, but this time things are different. This time Granny intends for them to never return. Separated from her best friends, Raimi and Beverly, Louisiana struggles to oppose the winds of fate and Granny to find a way to return home. And then she becomes involved with these other people that they meet when she like leaves home, and you learn more about her background and stuff as the book goes on, and it's very interesting and very complex, very emotional, and yeah, I love it. I'm also from Louisiana, but that doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay. And then the third one in the series is Beverly Right Here. So Beverly Topinski has run away from home plenty of times, but that was when she was just a kid. Now that she's 14 years old, she figures it's not running away, it's leaving. Determined to make it on her own, she finds a job and a place to live and tries to forget about her dog, Buddy, now buried underneath the orange trees back home. Her friend Raimi, whom she left without a word, and her mom, Rhonda, who has never cared about anyone but herself. Yeah, so this one's same thing. It's just dealing with these emotional things, dealing with the life of a 14-year-old girl. And they're all very, very well written. So this is the Beatrice Prophecy, and this one is let's see, about 240 something pages. So this one's illustrated by Sophie Blackall, and it has a lot of illustrations. So this one is a little bit, it also is dealing with a little girl who's like trying to find her way home and without like resources in a way in the beginning. It's not, I'm gonna explain it. To me, it feels a little bit different in tone than a lot of her other books, fairy tale-ish. Lightly. There is one creature that the monks of the Chronicles of Sorrowing fear above all others, Angelica the goat. The monks fear her sharp teeth and her hard head and her willy ways, and so imagine Brother Edict's terror when he goes to feed Angelica one morning and finds a child in the pen with the demon goat. The child does not know where she came from. She does not know who people are. She remembers only one thing, her name, Beatrice. The king's men, however, know who the child is, and they are searching for her. So this one's kind of like, has like more of like a mysterious beginning. It's kind of like draws you in because you're like, oh, that's crazy. Why does she only remembers her name? We love K.T. Camillo. And yeah, we've both read all of them. It's Lauren Wilk, Beyond the Bright Sea. and it won a Scott Odell Award for historical fiction. Okay, so this book is about 280 pages. Abandoned and set adrift in a small boat when she was just hours old, Crow's only companions are Osh, the man who rescued and raised her, and Miss Maggie, their fierce and affectionate neighbor. Crow's always been curious about the world around her, but it isn't until the night a mysterious fire appears across the water that the unspoken question of her history forms in her heart. It's this very, very emotional, sweet story between her and this man who ends up raising her. And also between this woman who's, they say, it says Miss Maggie, who also is a neighbor of Osh, who is a big part of, ends up being a big part of her life. And so it's basically the story of her trying to find out what, like, her roots, where she came from, and stuff like that, and like them helping her and her life with them. And the writing, I love the writing. She's a very, very good writer. She says a little bit in the end. Let's see. So the island that this book is loosely based on was like a real place, and the island was a school of natural history and a turkey farm, among other things, before it became a colony to isolate smallpox patients and then to quarantine people with Hansen's disease, also known as leprosy. So basically, this book is like loosely based on people who were sent to live in leper colonies and they were like real, which I never heard of till I read this book. This little girl is trying to discover like her history and how might she be connected to this island of this leprosy, because like I said, she was separated and she's like orphaned. So it's like her trying to investigate this, and it's just a very well written book. Okay, so the next two books, it's like 1 and 2. This is the first one is Wolf Hollow, and this is the sequel, My Own Lightning. So Wolf Hollow. So Annabelle has lived a mostly quiet life in her small Pennsylvania town until the day new student Betty quickly reveals herself to be cruel and manipulative, and though her bullying seems isolated at first, it quickly escalates. Toby, a reclusive World War I veteran, soon becomes the target of Betty's attacks. While others see Toby's strangeness, Annabelle knows only kindness. So I don't want to give it away because I'm not recommending my daughter read these two books for a while. She's 10, and so I'm still putting them in this video because I still think they're my favorite middle grade realistic fiction. Because even though they're dealing with harder themes when it comes to like bullying is an easy way to put it, but some of the bullying becomes a point where I like I said, I think it might be upsetting to like some kids. So, but I think this one was way sadder, like way, 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 way sadder than this one, of course. So, but it's still, her writing is so good, and even though it's dealing with harder themes, it's still worth it in my opinion. Okay, and so this is another one. This is Echo Mountain. So this one's not as like, I think, let me describe it in the beginning. So when the Great Depression, and it also takes place during the Great Depression, a lot of her books are like set in kind of rural areas, except, Beyond the Bright Sea is, near, the sea, but Wolf Hollow and Echo Mountain, this is like based during the Great Depression. So Ellie's family is forced to leave their home in town and start over in an untamed forest of a nearby Echo Mountain. Ellie has found a welcome freedom and a love of the natural world in her new life on the mountain, but there is little joy. Her family struggles with the aftermath of an accident that leaves her father in a coma, an accident unfairly blamed on Ellie. She wants to search at the top of the mountain and of the healing secrets of a woman only known as the Hag, but the Hag and the mountain still have very untold stories left to reveal. So this one is mainly about a little girl who's trying to deal with the fact that her father's in a coma. But this one, it's typical realistic fiction, right? It's dealing with like just the emotions of people and like life tribulations and poverty, a little, and just like the things that people have to go through. It's like a smidge more kind of like Little House on the Prairie-ish, and the fact that you kind of like learn about these day-to-day things that this family does. and Wolf Hollow a little bit too, like because of the rural aspect of the books. And so this one, yeah, and then it's like this woman that it says they call the hag. It's kind of like this relationship that this little girl forms with this woman, and it's also kind of like about like not judging people for what you think they are, but getting to know them kind of. And so it's an interesting book. So next is my third favorite, one of my favorite realistic fiction authors, and that is Sarah Pennypacker. A lot of people are probably familiar with Sarah Pennypacker from PAX, and she also wrote Here in the Real World. So my daughter and I both read this book. Now, I put it on this list of our favorite middle grade because it is one of my favorites, but it's not one of my daughter's favorites. And PAX is on her list to read for this year, so 4th grade. She should be reading this soon. I read all of this, of course, and loved them. So, Here in the Real World is about a little boy named Ware, and he really doesn't want to go to summer camp. And he's an introvert, or he's introverted, and he wants to hang out in this abandoned lot next to the place, like the campus, and he meets this little girl named Jolene, and she's a tough talking girl with big plans for the garden she's planting in the lot. She accuses Ware of being a dreamer and not living in the real world like she does. Yeah, it's like all about these two kids who become friends and kind of like their life, day-to-day life that takes place like in a summer. This is kind of like a good book to read in the summer if you're looking for a book for your kid to read during the summer. Also, if you have a child that's kind of like a little more introverted and has a big imagination, I don't know if you might want to call it like coming of age. But she's a very good writer, and so yeah, it's all about him and this friendship with this little girl over the summer and the things that they do, kind of doing his own thing. Like I said, he didn't want to go to that camp. Okay, and then the next two are the sequel, so PAX, and then PAX Journey Home. PAX is one of my favorite middle grade books I've ever read. A lot of people have heard of it, but I'll just say it real quick. It's about a fox and a boy named Peter, and he rescued the fox when the fox was a kid, and one day his dad enlists in the military and makes him return the fox to the wild. It's like, yeah. And then at his grandfather's house 300 miles away, Peter knows he isn't where he should be with PAX. He strikes out on his own despite the encroaching war, spurred by love, loyalty, and grief to be reunited with his fox. So what I really like about this book is it's every chapter rotates from the fox perspective, then Peter's perspective. And it has some really cool illustrations by John Klassen. And so it really flows because you're like, what's the fox doing? What's Peter doing? What's the fox doing? Like, it really works. So I think this book will make a really good read aloud. I also think it's really good for kids to read independently, and I loved it. And then of course you have the sequel, which was very well written. I liked it just as much as, not of course just as much as the first one because you're introduced to them in the first one, but I loved it a lot. Okay, and so the last four are a stretch to say realistic fiction, and I'm not calling them realistic fiction, but yet I had to include them into this video because I didn't really know what to call this genre other than just to say it's like a middle grade novel. But since the characters are all very humanized, this is a robot, but Roz feels very much like a human, and you definitely empathize with her. I did. And my daughter read both of these first. Very much about they're very much more adventure, and it's like Roz's relationship with all these animals that she ends up being around in the story. And so, I'm starting with the second one. So the first one, Roz opens her eyes for the first time. She discovers that she is alone on a wild, remote island. She has no idea how she got there or what her purpose is, but she knows she needs to survive. After battling a fierce storm and escaping a bear attack, she realized that her only hope for survival is to adapt to her surroundings and learn from the island's unwelcoming animal creatures. As Roz slowly befriends the animals, the island starts to feel like home, until one day her mysterious past comes back to haunt her. So there definitely has like, they definitely have some things in this book that are kind of like, it's more, I think it has like a lot of tension in it a little bit, and like in a mild way that you're like, oh, like you can't like feel very involved in like what's gonna happen with Roz. I think it's also cool that he does his own illustrations. He's a writer illustrator, so there's a lot of illustrations in it, and so it's all about the relationship that Roz has, trying to form a friendship with these animals who she is a total pretty much alien, and she's a robot, but like they don't know what she is. She doesn't know how, and it's just a beautiful story about friendship and love and just being kind to each other, even though it's animals and a robot, you almost feel like they're humans or whatever because they're very humanized. And then The Wild Robot Escapes, very, very good. I enjoyed both of them and I recommend them very, very much. I think a wide variety of like interested, like kids interested in a wide variety of books would like these because they're very hard to describe. You just have to kind of check them out, and I think they're very engaging, very well written. Okay. Also, The Wild Robot has, this is like 269 pages. Pax is 276. This is the one and only Ivan, and it's a Newbery Award winner. And this one is 317 pages. So Catherine Applegate has a very distinct way of writing. Writing is very similar in a lot of her books where she has a lot of spacing in between it. And then she has like titles, almost like poetry. Oh, this was another one of those books where I read, and my daughter hasn't read it yet because she just wants to read fantasy. And it's on her fourth grade list of books to be read. So I definitely think before the end of the year she's going to read it, because she's kind of feeling like she's coming around to it. We've been having it for years. And you can read it pretty quickly because of the way, with the spacing and things like that. So this is also one of those books that's like very, very, very bittersweet. It's very sad, but then it's not too much. But yeah, on the other hand, it's like it's just like the friendships and the humanity and the kindness that of these animals and then people that he meets in this book. And you're dealing with like pretty much literary fiction themes and universal themes, and the writing is really good. Like I said, she has a very distinct way of writing, and it's pretty much, like I said, I've read Wish Tree. I noticed it in Wish Tree too. And yeah, it's like I mean, you almost could say it is kind of poetic. He doesn't have the environment that he needs. Obviously, the perfect environment would have him never been taken from his mother, his family, in his natural habitat. And so it's very, very bittersweet in that sense. And I was kind of reluctant to read it at first because I don't like seeing animals in cages. I have like claustrophobia myself. I don't. And so, but it was definitely worth me reading it. And author's note is very worth reading because it helped me a lot understand why she wrote this. Okay, and so the last book that I have is technically not middle grade. This is a ex-library book, and it's marked YA. I actually was surprised. I actually thought it was middle grade, but since it said YA, it's very... So it's called The Murderer's Ape. And I'm getting off. It's Jacob Wagelis. Wagelis is the author. Now this one's a pretty big book. It is 588 pages. It took me over a month to finish it. I didn't focus just on this book. I was reading other things. So my daughter hasn't read this yet, but since this video is more my middle fiction favorites, because like I said, she, other than Kate DiCamillo, her fantasy was kind of her thing. But I'm encouraging her to read it. So this is another book I'm going to put on her list, probably for 5th grade, because I don't think she's going to get to it with all the other realistic fiction plus the other books she has. But yeah, I'm recommending it to her. Okay, let me talk about this book. Sally Jones is not only a loyal friend, she's an extraordinary individual. In overalls or a turban, this gorilla moves along among humans without speaking and understanding everything. She and the chief are devoted friends who operate a cargo boat. A job they offered pays big bucks, but the deal ends badly and the chief is falsely convicted of murder. So don't be If you're someone who might be put off by the title, don't be, because it's not some gory, violent book about murder. It's like called The Murderer's Ape because people think that this gorilla, because I'm not giving anything away, it says it here. People call the gorilla, whose name is Sally Jones, people call her the murderer's ape because they think that by association, she calls her chief, which is like her owner, is accused of murder. But it's really not this like murder, like a typical murder that takes place. And I don't want to give too much away by saying it, but it's definitely not scary. I was not scared any time in this book, and believe me, I'm very sensitive. There was nothing in this book that was scary or give me nightmares. It is very, very slow moving book. So I would say for younger middle grade, I don't know, depending on your child's age, like they might not want it. Like I could see why it's YA, because the protagonist is a gorilla named Sally Jones, and we don't really know how old she is because she was captured. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the one and only Ivan. They were both captured when they were infants, baby gorillas, and they're both highly intelligent. They both form bonds, with people and animals. Well, actually, Sally Jones more with people. She doesn't really interact with other animals. The illustrations in the beginning are nice because they point out all the characters in the book. And it's very much adventure, like kind of slow-paced adventure and a little bit of mystery, even though you kind of know what's going to happen in the end, but you want to know how you get there. Like you want to spend time with the gorilla along the way. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the way Dickens writes, because it's very detailed. It's very much about the day-to-day life of this gorilla and the people that she meets along her journey, and trying to help her boss, her chief, her best friend get free in a way, because she knows that she wants to clear his name because she knows he's innocent. So it's that whole journey of her trying to help the man who she loves more than anyone in the world, who took care of her before he went to prison. And it's very interesting. And I think if you like books, or if your kids like books based from the protagonists of an animal, I'm really glad that I read it. And yeah, I love Sally Jones. I loved being with her along her journey, and I highly recommend it. And so that's all for this part 2. My part 3 is going to be our favorite children's classics and mysteries. So yeah, so please feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate everyone who likes. It helps grow my channel, subscribes, and watches. Have a good day or night, and stay tuned for part 3. Thanks.